The chamber had been standing before most species had learned the word for war. It was not built on a planet. It was carved. A hollowed structure cut into the interior of a dead star's cooled shell, its walls fused from pressure and time into something harder than any alloy now in use. The Concordat Assembly did not choose locations for convenience. It chose them for permanence. Light filtered down from the upper vault in slow, shifting layers, refracted through crystalline panels that had not been replaced in 3,200 years. The ceiling was distant enough that sound reached it late and returned softened, as if even echoes had learned to behave themselves here. 47 species had stood in this chamber. They had come with fleets, with weapons, with histories of conflict that stretched back further than most of their recorded language. They had stood beneath this ceiling and agreed, sometimes reluctantly, sometimes desperately, that continued existence was preferable to proving who was strongest. The Concordat was not built on trust. It was built on mutual understanding. Every species here was capable of ending another. That was enough. For 4,000 years, that understanding had held. Wars had been prevented not by kindness, but by calculation. Disputes were processed, conflicts contained, aggression translated into clauses and counterclauses until it became something manageable, something that fit inside documents instead of spilling across systems. The chamber had seen it all. Threats turned into negotiations. Negotiations turned into treaties. Treaties turned into stability. It had never failed. Not once. Ambassador Sarah Voss entered the chamber 12 minutes before session start. By Concordat standards, that was late. The delegations were already in place. To her left, the drill occupied their containment tank, the water inside faintly illuminated from below. 8 of them drifted in slow formation, their movements so gradual they appeared motionless unless watched carefully. They were among the oldest species in the Concordat. Their decisions were never rushed. Across the chamber, the Keth clustered near the eastern boundary, their 6-legged frames compressed slightly closer together than usual. They communicated in subtle shifts of posture and spacing. Today, those shifts suggested something unsettled. The Marin delegation had taken their position near the central tier. Their skin held a neutral tone, calm, controlled, but the patterning beneath it was too uniform, too still. And directly opposite the human section sat the Vthkai. Perfectly aligned. Perfectly still. Their limbs folded with geometric precision, their posture identical, their exoskeletons polished to a reflective sheen. It was a display not of vanity, but of control. They had already decided something. That much was clear. Voss took her seat. She set her bag down beside her chair and removed a notepad, paper, bound, physical. The kind that required a hand to move across it, the kind that left marks that could not be edited or erased with a command. A few of the nearby delegates noticed it. They always did. No one had ever asked her why she used it. She had never explained. She uncapped her pen, wrote the date at the top of the page, and then waited. Her expression did not change. It rarely did. Not because she concealed emotion, but because she had long ago decided that her face was not part of the negotiation. Around her, the chamber settled into silence. Not the absence of sound. There was always the low hum of systems, the faint circulation of air, the soft displacement of water in the drill tank, but the kind of silence that came from attention. Every delegation was watching. Not openly. Not obviously. But watching. There were no minor sessions in the Concordat Assembly. If something warranted full attendance, it mattered. And today mattered. Even before anyone had spoken, the atmosphere had shifted. It was subtle. The Keth cluster remained tighter than usual. The Marin's coloration did not change. One of the drill elders had adjusted position slightly, just enough to suggest awareness, not enough to draw notice from those who did not know what to look for. The Vthkai had not moved at all. Voss wrote a single line on her notepad. Not a sentence. A line. She looked at it for a moment, then closed the pen and rested it along the page's edge. Across the chamber, a Vthkai figure rose. Ambassador Kethrin. Tall even by his species standards, his frame carried the kind of deliberate weight that came from absolute confidence in position. His exoskeleton caught the chamber light in sharp, controlled reflections. This was not a discussion. This was a presentation. The chamber recognized the posture. Declarations had a specific shape. A beginning. A structure. An ending. Everyone present understood the format before the first word was spoken. And yet, something was wrong. Not visibly. Not measurably. But present. The kind of wrong that did not belong in a place that had been correct for 4,000 years. Voss did not look up. She adjusted the position of her notepad slightly, aligning it with the edge of the table, and rested her hand beside it. Her pen did not move. Her breathing did not change. If she felt anything about what was about to happen, it did not show. Above them, the distant ceiling caught the chamber's light and returned it in softened layers. For 4,000 years, this place had taken conflict and turned it into something survivable. For 4,000 years, it had worked. The chamber had learned a pattern. Everything that entered here could be contained. Everything that entered here could be managed. Everything that entered here could be made to fit. For the first time in its existence, that assumption was about to be tested. Ambassador Catherine began speaking without preamble. His voice entered the chamber through the Concordat translation system, rendered in perfect clarity, measured, neutral, precise. The system removed tone variation, but it could not remove intent. And his intent was unmistakable. This had been prepared. The Vthkai Empire, he said, wishes to formally address a series of ongoing structural violations committed by the human sovereignty. No reaction. Not outwardly. That was expected. Declarations were not performances. They were processes. So, every delegation in the chamber was now fully attentive. Catherine continued. The structure of his statement unfolded with quiet elegance. First, context. A review of Concordat statutes governing territorial integrity, trade corridor neutrality, and military presence limitations. He cited them cleanly, without hesitation, referencing clause numbers and historical precedents with the ease of someone who had internalized them completely. Second, incident listing. 3 violations. Individually insignificant. A boundary misalignment. A delayed withdrawal. A reinterpretation of a trade corridor clause. Each one on its own would normally trigger mediation. Together, he presented them as pattern. The brilliance of it was not in what he said. It was in how he said it. Each point connected to the next with deliberate inevitability, forming a chain that led to only one logical conclusion. Not exaggerated. Not emotional. Not aggressive. Just unavoidable. He spoke for 14 minutes. In that time, he referenced 42 Concordat statutes. 37 of them were only loosely relevant. It did not matter. By the time he reached his conclusion, they all appeared to support his position. Around the chamber, subtle changes began to emerge. The keth shifted again, closer. The Marin's coloration flattened further into uniformity. One of the drill elders had stopped even the slow, natural movement of its limbs. Not frozen. Focused. Voss wrote. Not transcription. She had a recorder for that. Her pen moved in short, efficient strokes. One line. Fuzz. Another. She did not look up. Catherine moved into the final section. His posture did not change, but something in the chamber tightened. Everyone recognized this point. The transition from argument to outcome. Given the sustained nature of these violations, he said, and the demonstrated unwillingness of the human sovereignty to operate within Concordat-defined stability parameters. A brief pause. Perfectly timed. The Vthkai Empire has determined that diplomatic resolution is no longer a viable framework. Silence. Absolute. Effective immediately, the Vthkai Empire recognizes a state of formal conflict with the human sovereignty. The words settled into the chamber like weight. Not explosive. Not dramatic. Heavy. Permanent. There were procedures for this. Everyone present knew them. Declarations triggered responses. Actions. Counterclaims. Emergency mediation requests. Invocation of protective clauses. Entire systems existed to manage this exact moment. The Concordat had spent 4,000 years refining what happened next. But for 9 seconds, nothing happened. Catherine finished. He lowered himself back into his seat with the same controlled precision with which he had risen. His limbs folded. His posture reset. The declaration was complete. Across the chamber, eyes turned. Not physically in some cases. But attention shifted. 47 species. All focused on one section. The humans. Voss capped her pen. She read what she had written. A single line. She nodded once, almost imperceptibly, like someone confirming a calculation they had already completed before the problem was presented. Around her, the expectation was uniform. Humans would respond. They always did. Not because they were predictable, but because protocol required it. And protocol, in this chamber, was everything. They would challenge the legal interpretation, invoke mediation, request delay, escalate diplomatically. They would demonstrate concern. Concern would be appropriate. Concern would be expected. Concern would be correct. Catherine watched her carefully. He had spent 40 years studying species response patterns. He knew what fear looked like across dozens of biological systems. He knew the signs, micromovements, precious, delayed reaction timing. He was waiting for it, not openly, but precisely. He did not see it. Voss looked up. For the first time since he had begun speaking, her expression had not changed. Not tightened. Not hardened. Not adjusted. She looked at him as if he had just finished explaining something routine. "Is that right?" she said. The translation system carried the words cleanly across the chamber. No elevation. No emphasis. No distortion. Not a question. Silence followed. Not the silence of confusion. The silence of something not aligning. Catherine did not respond immediately. He had prepared for objections. For counterarguments. For escalation. He had not prepared for this. Voss glanced down at her notepad again. Her pen hovered above the page. She wrote one more word. Closed the pen. Then she looked back at him. And waited. The chamber did not breathe. For the first time in 4,000 years. The process had been followed perfectly. And something was already wrong. The chamber waited. This was the part it understood. Declarations were not endings. They were openings. The next step was defined, refined over 4,000 years of careful conflict management. The human sovereignty would respond. They would challenge the legal framing, invoke mediation clauses, request review, delay escalation. There were procedures for all of it. Entire frameworks designed for this exact exchange. Voss did not reference any of them. She glanced once more at her notepad. Not reading. Confirming. The way someone checks a number they already know is correct. Then she spoke. "We'll need 72 hours. The words landed softly. Too softly. For a fraction of a second, the chamber did not process them. Not because they were unclear. Because they did not fit. She continued. Our civilians are operating in Vthkai trade corridors. Standard evacuation protocol requires notification and transit clearance. Her tone did not shift. No emphasis. No urgency. We have families there. Ongoing contracts. We'll want to get everyone out clean. Silence. Not the kind that followed a declaration. A different kind. Catherine remained still. His mind moved quickly. Faster than his body. He began parsing the response in real time. This was not an objection, counterargument, rejection. It was logistics. Voss gathered her papers, aligned them neatly, tapped them once against the table edge. After that, she said, we can work with it. That was all. No escalation. No protest. No attempt to prevent what had just been declared. She stood. The movement broke something. Not physically. Structurally. Because this was not part of the process. Declarations required engagement. Engagement required time. Time required procedure. Voss had used none of it. She picked up her bag, tucked the notepad inside, turned, and walked out of the chamber. No one stopped her. For 9 seconds, the Concordat Assembly did not produce a single sound. 9 seconds in a system built on immediate response. 9 seconds In a chamber that had processed thousands of conflicts without hesitation. 9 seconds of nothing. Across the chamber, reactions began. Not loudly. Not obviously. The Keth cluster compressed further, their limbs drawing inward. The Marin's coloration shifted, just slightly, toward a tone not often displayed. One of the drill elders moved. A small movement, but deliberate. Catherine remained seated, perfectly still. He had prepared for this moment. 4 months of legal preparation. 14 minutes of flawless delivery. 42 statutes aligned into a single conclusion. He had prepared responses for every possible outcome. Objections, appeals, negotiations, delays. He had 14 counterarguments ready. Each one structured. Each one precise. Each one designed to maintain control of the exchange. None of them applied. Because the humans had not engaged. They had accepted. Not accepted. Something else. He replayed her words. We'll need 72 hours. Evacuation. Civilians. Logistics. Not fear. Not resistance. Not negotiation. Preparation. Across the chamber, one of the drill elders shifted again. This time, more noticeably. The water in its containment tank moved in slow currents as it resettled its limbs. An aide leaned toward the tank, speaking quietly. Do we alert our military? The elder did not respond immediately. Its 4 eyes remained fixed on the doorway through which Voss had exited. When it spoke, its voice, translated through the chamber system, was low. Measured. Ancient. Alert no one. The pause. Long enough to matter. There is nothing to be done. Another pause. We observe. The aide hesitated. What are we observing? The elder did not look away from the door. This, it said, has not happened in 4,000 years. A final pause. And it will not happen again. Across the chamber, Catherine remained motionless. But something inside the structure he had built, the argument, the certainty, the expectation, had shifted. He had declared war. And the humans had responded, as if he had just informed them of the schedule. The chamber did not recover quickly. It was not built to. The Concordat Assembly had rules for everything. Dispute escalation. Mediation sequences. Conflict containment. There were procedures for war declarations. There were no procedures for what had just happened. Delegations began communicating. Quietly. Efficiently. Messages moved through private channels, encoded, routed through systems designed for discretion. To an untrained observer, the chamber still looked composed. To anyone who understood it, it was fragmenting. The Keth ambassador had sent 9 messages in under 3 minutes. Each one more urgent than the last. None of them asked the same question. All of them pointed toward the same problem. What does that response mean? The Marin delegation shifted again. Their coloration moved, not dramatically, not enough for most species to notice, but toward a uniform shade that their own linguists would have recognized immediately. It was not fear. Not exactly. It was irreversibility. Across the chamber, the drill elder remained focused on the door. It had not moved since Voss left. Its aides were no longer watching the Vthkai. They were watching it. They understood something was happening. They did not yet understand what. One of them spoke again, more carefully this time. If conflict begins, the aide said quietly, we will be required to respond under Concordat defense obligations. The elder did not answer immediately. The water in its tank shifted slowly with its breathing. Will we respond? The aide asked. A long pause. Long enough that the question began to feel misplaced. No, the elder said. The aide hesitated. That is not. It is not our war, the elder said. That determination has not been made. It has. The aide stopped. The elder shifted slightly. Not toward the aide. Still toward the door. You are asking the wrong question, it said. Another pause. The question is not whether conflict has begun. A longer pause. It is whether it was ever absent. The aide did not respond. It did not have a response. Across the chamber, the Vthkai delegation had begun internal discussion. Low tones. Precise gestures. Their legal team was already working. They were attempting to categorize what had just occurred. Was it an acknowledgement of conflict? A procedural delay? A conditional acceptance? A refusal disguised as compliance? There were no precedents, no case files, no comparable situations in the Concordat archive, because no species had ever responded this way before. Catherine did not participate in the discussion. He watched. Specifically, he watched the human seat. Empty now. He replayed the moment again. The response. The tone. The timing. He had been watching her face during the declaration. Carefully. Professionally. He had been looking for the transition. The moment when understanding becomes fear. It never came. That was not unusual. Some species delayed visible response. Some suppressed it. Some processed internally. But all of them, eventually, displayed it. He had seen fear in 47 different biological forms. He understood its patterns, its signals, its variations. What he had seen in Voss did not match any of them, which left two possibilities. She did not understand the situation, but she understood it completely. And the second possibility was the problem. Across the chamber, movement began to shift. Subtly, quietly. The Keth ambassador stopped sending messages. Instead, he issued one. Direct. Final. Begin asset withdrawal. The Marin delegation dimmed further. Not retreating. Not leaving. But preparing. Preparation was quiet. It did not require announcement. The drill elder closed two of its eyes. Then opened them again. A gesture so small most species would not have recognized it as thought. It was remembering. 300 years earlier. A document. A file. A request for Concordat membership. Humanity. The review had taken longer than any before it. Not because of complexity. Because of volume. 600,000 pages. History. Conflict. Collapse. Reconstruction. Repeated. Again. And again. And again. Most species submitted records that showed progression. Growth. Stability over time. Humanity's record did not. It showed cycles. Rise. Fall. Rebuild. Over and over. Across thousands of years. Across multiple independent civilizations. Across conditions that should have ended them. They had not ended. The committee had debated. Extensively. Some had argued they were unstable. Too volatile. Too prone to destruction. Others, a smaller number, had argued something else. Not unstable. Persistent. The elder had been part of that second group. It had read the entire file. To the end. It had not found safety in those pages. But it had found certainty. Whatever humanity was, it did not stop. The elder opened all four of its eyes fully now. Focused again on the empty doorway. They think, it said quietly, more to itself than to its aides, that they have initiated an event. The pause. They have not. Another pause. They have encountered a condition. The aide did not understand. Not yet. What condition? It asked. The elder did not look away from the door. The one that continues. Silence settled again. Different now. Across the chamber, species that had existed for thousands of years. Species that had built their survival on caution, balance, and controlled risk, were beginning to adjust. Not visibly, not formally, but internally. Calculations were being revised. Assumptions rewritten. Positions reconsidered. Not because of the declaration. Because of the response. War, the Concordat understood. War had rules, limits, and conditions. But this did not look like war. It looked like something else. Something that had been present. Before the declaration. Before the chamber. Before the Concordat. Something that did not begin here. And would not end here. Across the empty human seat. The absence of reaction had become information. And every species in the chamber was beginning to understand. At different speeds. The same thing. The humans had not been surprised. And that was the most dangerous part. The first thing Kepler 9 looked like from orbit was ordinary. Green, brown, water patterns that followed familiar curves. Not identical to Earth, but close enough that the human brain filled in the difference without effort. That was intentional. Humans had chosen it that way. 17 million people lived on Kepler 3. Most of them had never seen Earth. To them, this was not a colony. It was home. Commander Elias Hannon had been stationed there for 8 months. Long enough to know the routines. Long enough to stop noticing the sky. Long enough to start caring about the small things. There was a diner 2 kilometers from the base. Run by a woman named Perrin. She made coffee that tasted like it had opinions. He went there every morning. Same table. Same order. Not because he needed the coffee. Because it made the place feel real. He was thinking about that coffee when the Vthkai fleet arrived. Transit signatures confirmed, Lieutenant Yara said. Her voice was steady. It always was. Hannon didn't turn immediately. He finished what he was doing. Saved the file. Then looked up. How many? He asked. 43 ships, she said. Formation is standard suppression. He nodded once. The Vthkai did not improvise. They refined. Their doctrine was consistent across every recorded engagement. Orbital pressure. Infrastructure disruption. Civilian displacement. Controlled ground insertion. They had used it 17 times in the last 2 centuries. It worked. All right, Hannon said. Let's see it. The bunker lit up with data. Tactical overlays. Trajectory predictions. Impact projections. Above them, the first wave began. Orbital strikes hit with surgical precision. Not random. Not destructive. Targeted. 2 communication relays went dark. A power grid node failed. Civilian traffic shifted, exactly as predicted. They're pushing north to south, Yara said. Same as the model. Hannon nodded. Of course they were. The Vthkai did not invent strategies. They applied them. Ground teams incoming, another voice said. 6 landing zones. All optimal. Flat terrain. Controlled approach vectors. Close to population centers. But not too close. Everything was correct. Civilians are moving, Yara said. They're following the pressure lines. Good, Hannon said. He leaned back slightly. But for the first 40 minutes, everything went exactly the way it was supposed to. The Vthkai advanced. Efficient. Their models were accurate. Their execution was flawless. This was what they expected. Minute 41. Sir, Yara said. Something in her voice changed. Not panic. Not urgency. Recognition. Eastern flank, she said. We just lost them. Hannon looked at the display. 8 ships. Gone. Not damaged. Not retreating. Gone. No signal, he asked. Nothing, she said. No debris. No transmission. He watched the map. The eastern sector. Difficult terrain. Not useful. According to every external model. He nodded once. That's the first zone, he said. Yara glanced at him. You knew. Not this exact timing, he said. But the shape of it. He stood. Walked closer to the display. The Vthkai response was immediate. 2 fighters diverted. Sent to investigate. They disappeared. Same way. No signal. No trace. The bunker remained quiet. Not tense. Focused. Main fleet reaction? Hannon asked. They're increasing sensor sweep, Yara said. Heavy interference in that region. Of course there is, he said. He reached for a different file. Older. 17 years old. It had been updated, maintained, refined, but never used. Until now. Open Eastern Grid, he said. The display shifted. What the Vthkai saw was not what was there. The terrain had changed. Subtly. Gradually. Over years. Tunnels where there should have been none. Elevation shifts too small to register on outdated scans. Signal interference layered to look like geological noise. Humans were good at difficult terrain. They had spent a very long time learning how to use it. They think we're evacuating, Yara said. Hannon glanced at the signal feed. Distress patterns. Panic routing. Civilian movement data. All real. All controlled. They're seeing what they expect to see, he said. Yara nodded. Above them, The Vthkai fleet adjusted formation. Slightly lower orbit. More commitment. They're leaning in, she said. Good, Hannon replied. He sat down again. This was the part he liked. Not the fight. Not the impact. The moment when a plan met reality. Because plans were always wrong. Not completely. But enough. You built them knowing that. And then you watched. Adjusted. Adapted. How long do they think they have control? Yar asked. Hannon considered. 3 hours, he said. Maybe 4. And us. He looked at the grid. The zones. The preparation. Longer, he said. He picked up his coffee. It had gone cold. He didn't drink it. Behind him, the bunker moved with quiet efficiency. No shouting. No chaos. People did their jobs. A technician rerouted power through a secondary system. Another updated evacuation timing. Someone recalculated pressure distribution for civilian flow. Everything was happening at once. Nothing felt rushed. They're committing ground forces to sectors 3 through 7, Yara said. Hannon nodded. Let them. The next 6 hours followed a pattern. The Vthkai advanced. Then stopped. Not pushed back. Not destroyed. Stopped. Every path forward led into something. Not always the same thing. Sometimes terrain. Sometimes structure. Sometimes systems that shouldn't have been there. Their maps were wrong. Not outdated. Wrong. By hour 6, the engagement report looked like this. Eastern flank, plus. Ground units, contained. Civilian movement, controlled. Infrastructure, operational. From the Vthkai perspective, it did not make sense. From Hannon's, it did. They're trying to apply pressure, Yara said. They are pressure, Hannon replied. He stood again. Walked toward the exit. Where are you going? She asked. Outside, he said. Sir, I want to see it. He stepped out of the bunker into late afternoon light. The sky was different here. Slightly warmer. Slightly thinner clouds. Above it, somewhere, the Vthkai flagship. He couldn't see it. He didn't need to. He knew where it was. He looked up anyway. They still think this is going to work. Yara's voice came through the calm. He smiled slightly. Not amused. Not mocking. Recognizing. They always do, he said. He thought about the diner. Perrin. The coffee. The people moving south. The ones who would make it. The ones who wouldn't. He didn't do the math. He never did. Because the job wasn't to think about that. The job was to make the next system work. Second wave forming, Yara said. Good, he replied. Turned. Walked back toward the bunker. They think we prepared for them, she said. He paused at the entrance. No, he said. Then he went inside. We prepared for this. The beat. Whatever this turned out to be. He disappeared into the bunker. Above the planet. The Vthkai fleet recalculated. Adjusted. Committed further. Still working from the same assumption. That pressure would eventually produce fear. They had not realized yet that they were not applying pressure to something fragile. They were applying it to something that had been shaped by it. For a very long time. The cargo vessel Ardent Line was not a military ship. It had no weapons. No armor beyond standard hull plating. No strategic value. That was why it was chosen. The Vthkai did not need to destroy it. They needed to demonstrate something. That human systems were vulnerable. The boarding was clean. Precise. Efficient. 3 Vthkai interceptors locked its trajectory. A patrol vessel closed distance. Magnetic clamps engaged. Inside the cargo hold, 9 humans waited. They had been instructed to comply. Not resist. Not escalate. This was not a fight. Not yet. They were moved into containment. Separated first. Then brought together again. The room was designed for this. Low light. Temperature slightly off human comfort range. Sound dampening that made voices feel smaller than they were. Psychological pressure. It worked on most species. The Vthkai interrogator entered. Commander Kepler. 40 years of experience. 9 successful interrogations across 5 species. He did not rush. He stood in the center of the room. Looked at them. They looked back. No one spoke. He began with the display. A projection filled the wall behind him. Fleet numbers. Interdiction zones. Destroyed relays. Disrupted supply routes. A complete picture of human vulnerability. He watched their faces. 2 younger crew members leaned forward slightly. Focused. The others remained still. Not rigid. Not resistant. Present. The ship's senior officer sat slightly apart. Elbows on her knees. Hands loose. Watching. Her name was Ria Tal. 29. Pilot. Kepler completed the display. You understand your position, he said. It was not a question. Ria tilted her head slightly. Can you run that last part again? She said. He paused. Then replayed the supply chain segment. She watched it. Carefully. Nodded once. Yeah, she said. A small pause. That's not going to work. The room shifted. Not physically. Something else. Kepler did not react immediately. Explain, he said. She leaned back slightly. The relay you hit last week, she said. Junction 12. He said nothing. You think that was our primary node? A small pause. It wasn't. She raised her hand. Held up 4 fingers. That was number 4. Not aggressive. Not defiant. Matter of fact. We've got 3 more running parallel. She lowered her hand. They're not on your maps. A slight shrug. We installed them after joining the Concordat. Never updated the registry. She glanced at the others briefly. Filing systems not great. One of the younger crew members almost smiled. You cut supply routes, she continued. We reroute. You hit infrastructure, she said. We rebuild. You shut down communication, she said. We route around it. Kepler adjusted slightly. You are underestimating the scale of this operation, he said. She shook her head. No, she said. You are. Silence. He shifted tactics. The display changed. Footage. Kepler tonight. Impact zones. Damage reports. Civilian loss estimates. He watched her face. Carefully. This was the part that worked. Plus. Fear always lived there. She watched the footage. Did not look away. When ended, she was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, How many ships did you lose? He did not answer. You know we track that, right? She said. Still calm. Still level. We always track it. He moved to the final approach. Personal pressure. Your home, he said. Your family. A slight pause. These are no longer secure. He watched her. This was where it should happen. The shift. The tightening. The recognition. She looked at him. For a long moment. Not angry. Not cold. Something else. Understanding. Not of the situation. Of him. You've been at war for 4 months, she said. Her voice did not change. We've been at war for 200,000 years. The room went still. She lifted a hand slightly, stopping the response before it formed. Not with you, she said. A small pause. With everything. Another. The environment. The things that wanted to eat us. The things we couldn't see. Each other. She leaned forward slightly. We've lost cities, she said. We've lost entire systems. We've lost things we didn't even know how to replace. A breath. And we kept going. Silence. He did not interrupt. Because something in the structure of the conversation had shifted beyond his control. You cut supply lines, she said. We build new ones. You break systems, she said. We already built backups. You take something away, she said. We make something else. She leaned back again. Relaxed. This, a small gesture around the room, is normal for us. The pause. This is Tuesday. Silence. Not the chamber kind. Not procedural. Something heavier. Kepler did not speak, because there was nothing in his training that applied to this. He ran the analysis later. 17 markers. Voice stress. Micro-expression. Linguistic patterning. All negative. She was not performing. Not resisting. Not projecting. She was correct. The report would say, Subject displays no elevated fear response. No suppression pattern detected. No deception indicators present. And then, in smaller text, the subject does not appear to be overcoming fear. The subject appears to be operating in a state where fear is baseline. Back in the room, Ria Tao sat with her crew, waiting, not for rescue, not for escape, but waiting, the same way people waited, for the next thing, because there was always a next thing, and when it came, they would deal with it, the way they always did, without asking if they could, because that question had stopped mattering a very long time ago. The report reached Strategic Command in 3 hours. It should have taken 12. It did not move through normal channels. It bypassed them, flagged at every level, forwarded with annotations that were unusually brief. Review required. Unclear classification. Recommend priority escalation. By the time it reached Senior Analyst Keth Sol, it had already been read 7 times. He read it again. Not because he had missed something. Because he had not. The interrogation transcript was clean, structured, complete. No gaps. No inconsistencies. No signs of coercion failure. Which meant the problem was not the data. It was the conclusion. He opened the behavioral analysis panel. 17 metrics. All aligned. Fear response, absent. Suppression indicators, negative. Deception probability, negligible. He paused there. Not because the data was unclear. Because it was clear. He cross-referenced prior engagements. Kepler 3 months of data. Military personnel. Civilians. Logistics crews. Same pattern. No collapse under pressure. No escalation of panic. No behavioral degradation over time. Which was impossible. Every species degraded under sustained threat. That was not theory. That was observed reality. Fear accumulated. Stress compounded. Decision-making fractured. It was universal. Except, he opened the historical appendix. He had avoided it earlier. Not deliberately, but because it was large. Very large. Human historical record. Documented. Cross-referenced. Expanded. Over 200,000 years. He stared at the number. Then verified it. Then verified it again. The longest Concordat record before this. 6,000. Most species. Under 2,000. Humans. 200,000. He began reading. Not everything. That was not possible. Selected segments. Collapse events. Multiple. Total systems failure. Population loss. Infrastructure disappearance. Knowledge gaps. Reconstruction. Not once. Repeated. Across time. Across geography. Across completely independent civilizations. So, different conditions. Different triggers. Same outcome. They did not stop. He leaned back. Ran a secondary analysis. Overlaying behavioral data with historical exposure. A model began to form. Not clean. Not complete. But consistent. He opened a new file. Titled it Human Behavioral Response, Revised Model. Then stopped. Because the word revised implied continuity with the previous model. There was no continuity. The previous model did not apply. He deleted the title. Started again. Human Behavioral Structure, Preliminary Assessment. He wrote slowly, carefully. Not because he lacked words. Because he understood. This would be read by people who did not want it to be true. The available evidence suggests that human subjects are not suppressing fear response under conflict conditions. He paused. That line was acceptable. He continued. Standard fear response arc, stimulus, escalation, impairment, collapse, does not appear to function within expected parameters. Still acceptable. Still within model language. The part that wasn't. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then wrote, It is possible that the human species has experienced threat conditions at sufficient frequency and severity that fear response has been structurally normalized. He stopped again. This was where it would break. He knew it. He continued anyway. In this framework, fear does not function as a trigger event. Another pause. It functions as a persistent background condition. Silence in the room. He read it back. It sounded wrong. Not inaccurate. Not something that should exist. He added the final line. Simplified. Stripped of technical language. They are not resisting fear. They are operating inside it. He saved the file. Did not send it. Not yet. Because he knew what would happen. It would be challenged. Rewritten. Adjusted until it fit existing frameworks. And if it fit, it would be wrong. He opened a second file. Pulled excerpts from the historical record. Collapse after collapse. Rebuild after rebuild. He selected one. A civilization that had lost infrastructure, population, environmental stability. Recovered. Then lost again. Recovered again. He attached it. Then another. And another. By the time he finished, the appendix was longer than the report. Because this was not something that could be summarized. It had to be understood. He sent the file. Supreme Commander Veth's soul read it alone. No aids. No interruptions. He had spent 9 months searching for error. There was always error. There had to be. He read the report once. Then again. Then a third time. He did not skip sections. He did not skim. When he reached the appendix, he slowed. When he reached the historical record, he stopped. Not at the beginning. In the middle. A collapse event. Total. No recovery expected. Recovery occurred. He read it again. Then the next. And the next. He put the report down. His hands remained on the table. Still, he noticed that. He rarely noticed things like that. He called for a council. 6 generals. No aides. The room sealed. He did not speak immediately. He let the silence sit. Longer than usual. Long enough to become uncomfortable. Why don't they flinch? He asked. No one answered. Not immediately. Because the question was not tactical. General Keth Mal shifted. Carefully. I've been reviewing Kepler 9, he said. The pause. They are old. The word felt insufficient. Not biologically. Not technologically. Something else. They have lost more than we model for, he continued. They have rebuilt more times than we account for. Another pause. We are applying pressure, he said. They are responding as if pressure is normal. Silence. Another general spoke. My infrastructure model was correct, she said. I applied it properly. A longer pause. It failed anyway. She looked down at the table. They don't build systems the way we do. They build for failure. Another pause. They expect it. The room held it. Not arguing. Not correcting. Processing. A younger general spoke. They choose this. All attention shifted. They volunteer, he said. Military. Civilian. Logistics. They are not compelled. They go anyway. He hesitated. I don't understand why. Veth's soul looked at him. He understood something else. The question was wrong. It was not. Why do they do this? It was, what kind of species becomes this? He looked back at the report. At the line. They are not resisting fear. They are operating inside it. He closed the file. Slowly. We did not start a war. No one asked him to clarify. They already knew. We interrupted something. Silence followed. Not confusion. Recognition. The kind that arrives too late to be useful, but early enough to matter. The request did not go through diplomatic channels. It bypassed them. No mediation office. No protocol clearance. No advisory review. It came directly from Supreme Commander Veth Sol's personal line. That alone was irregular. The message was simple. Request direct communication. It was accepted in 4 minutes. Voss was eating when the call came in. Not a formal meal. Not ceremonial. A plate. Utensils. Something warm. She did not rush to answer. She finished the bite she was on. Set the fork down. Wiped her hands once with a cloth. Then nodded to Torin. Go ahead. The screen activated. Veth Sol appeared. He was older than most commanders. Not physically fragile, but shaped by time. His posture was precise. Controlled. But there was something else now. Not visible in movement. Visible in stillness. He was looking. Not at her. At what she represented. Ambassador, he said. Commander, she replied. Her tone was the same as it had been in the chamber. Even. Unmoved. He noticed that. He noticed everything now. I have questions, he said. She leaned back slightly. I imagine you do. No tension. No defensiveness. Agreement. He had prepared questions. Many. Precise. Structured. Questions about strategy, logistics, deployment patterns, infrastructure resilience. He did not ask any of them, because somewhere between reading the report and opening this channel, he had understood something. Those questions did not matter. He asked the only one that did. How long, he said. She looked at him. Clarify. How long have you been like this? The translation system carried the words cleanly, but the question itself was not clean. It was not technical. It was not strategic. It was wrong. Not incorrect. Misplaced. Voss was quiet for a moment, not because she was formulating an answer, because she was considering the premise. That depends, she said, on what you think we are. He did not respond, because he did not know. Not anymore. She reached for her fork, then stopped. Set it down again. Not avoiding the question. Choosing the answer. We've been human for about 200,000 years, she said. The pause. We've been this version of human the whole time. No emphasis. No weight added. Fact. We didn't start strong, she continued. We weren't the biggest. We weren't the fastest. We didn't have claws. A small pause. Most things that had claws could kill us. He listened. Not interrupting. Not analyzing. Listening. So we figured out other things, she said. Another pause. And we never stopped figuring them out. Silence. The statement did not feel complete. But it was. Veth's soul processed it. Not as data. As implication. Your species, he said slowly, has been under continuous threat conditions for that duration. She nodded slightly. More or less. And you are still here. She looked at him directly. We're always still here. No emphasis. No pride. No warning. Certainty. The kind that does not need reinforcement. He sat with that. For longer than protocol allowed. For longer than he would have allowed himself. 9 months ago. He realized something then. The mistake. Not in data. Not in strategy. In assumption. They had approached humanity as a problem to be solved. A system to be understood. An opponent to be managed. They were none of those things. They were a condition. Persistent. Adaptive. Continuous. He had spent his career learning how to end wars. Was not something that ended. It changed. It absorbed. It continued. He closed the channel. Without dismissal. Without formal conclusion. Ended it. Voss picked up her fork again. Took another bite. The food had gone slightly cold. She didn't mind. Across the room, Torin was watching her. Trying to understand what he had just witnessed. What did he want? He asked. She swallowed. Context, she said. And? She set the fork down again. He got it. The pause. Will it change anything? Torin asked. She thought about it. Not long. Yes, she said. Another pause. Everything. She picked up her fork again. Finished her meal. Because there was still work to do. And the next thing was already coming. As it always did. The station was called Neutral 7. It was not designed to be impressive. It was designed to be forgettable. Gray walls. Balanced gravity. Atmospheric composition adjusted to accommodate the widest range of species possible. No one was comfortable there. That was the point. Comfort implied advantage. Neutral 7 offered none. 41 species had sent observers. Officially, they were present for unrelated matters. Trade reviews. Policy discussions. Research exchanges. Unofficially, they were here to watch. Because something had happened. And no one trusted themselves to understand it alone. The Vthkai delegation arrived early. deliberately. Lead negotiator, Ambassador Kepler. 40 years of diplomatic experience. Specialization, conflict resolution. He had ended 7 wars. He understood the process. War ended the same way it began. With structure. He had prepared accordingly. 3 weeks of analysis. Human negotiation patterns. Historical precedents. Acceptable concessions. Optimal counteroffers. He had built a framework. 5 sections. 22 minutes of delivery. It covered everything. Territorial adjustments. Reparations. Resource distribution. Long-term oversight. He was ready. Because this was familiar. The human delegation arrived exactly on time. No delay. No early positioning. Ambassador Voss entered with 2 aides. Same clothes. Same posture. The notepad was in her hand. She sat. Placed it on the table. Aligned it with the edge. Set the pen beside it. Ambassador, Kepler began, on behalf of the Vthkai Empire. Go ahead, she said. Not interrupting. Not dismissing. Proceed. He adjusted. Then delivered. 22 minutes. Precise. Structured. Every section presented cleanly. Every clause positioned. Every outcome mapped. He did not rush. He did not hesitate. This was his expertise. When he finished. Silence. Controlled. The kind that usually preceded negotiation. Voss reached for her notepad. Not the top page. A page near the back. She did not search for it. She knew where it was. She turned it. Looked at it once. Then slid it across the table. Kepler looked down. Read it. Then again. Because it did not align. The page contained 1 line. Handwritten. Don't do it again. Silence. Not procedural. Not expected. Something else. He looked up at her. That's all, he said. That's all, she replied. He leaned back slightly. His mind moved quickly. Through everything he had prepared. 5 sections. 22 minutes. 40 years of experience. None of it applied. There must be additional terms, he said. There aren't. The pause. You won, he said carefully. Not emotionally. Not defensively. Your military position. We know, she said. We know what we could ask for. She picked up her pen. Turned it once between her fingers. We know what the precedent supports. She set the pen down again. We're telling you what we want. Silence. He looked at the page again. Don't do it again. No territory. No resources. No restructuring. No enforcement. Why? He asked. Not diplomatically. Genuinely. She considered the question. Not long. Because your territory doesn't give us back our people, she said. Your resources don't fix what you broke. Your political structure is your problem. The pause. And numbers on paper don't matter. She leaned back slightly. We need one thing. Another pause. This not to happen again. Silence. Kepler processed it. Slowly. Because this was not negotiation. It was decision. And enforcement? He asked. None. He blinked. No oversight? No. No compliance structure? No. A longer pause. You agree not to do it again, she said. We take you at your word. Silence. Longer now. Because this did not exist in any model. In 40 years. He had never heard this. Victory without extraction. Power without leverage. Trust without mechanism. That is significant, he said carefully. It's not trust, she replied. He looked at her. It's a choice. The pause. You can do it again. Another pause. We're not going to stop you. Something in her expression shifted. Not warmer. Not colder. Deeper. But now you know what happens. Silence. You didn't know before, she said. Now you do. She leaned back. We're letting you decide what to do with that. A final pause. That's the mechanism. The treaty was signed. 1 page. 4 signatures. 2 witnesses. 9 minutes. The shortest peace process in Concordat history. No celebration. No ceremony. Completion. The observers watched. 41 species. None of them spoke. Because they understood something, not written on the page, but present in the room. The humans had asked for almost nothing, which meant they could have asked for anything, and chose not to. That was the part that mattered. That was the part everyone would remember. Not the war. Not the victory. The choice. Crossed the table. Voss closed her notepad. Picked it up. So, get some rest, she said to Torin. We've got paperwork tomorrow. Then she left. Like it had been. Just another meeting. Just another task. Just another. The observers did not leave immediately. They remained in the chamber after the signatures were completed. Not because protocol required it. Because something had changed. And no one trusted themselves to move yet. The table was empty now. The page had been removed. The signatures recorded. The agreement archived. Officially, the war was over. Unofficially, something else had begun. The Marin delegation was the first to move. Not quickly. Not abruptly. A slow shift in posture. A subtle change in coloration. Their uniform gray broke. Not into calm. Into something else. A tone rarely used. Recognition. They left without speaking. The Keth followed. Their cluster expanded again. Not relaxed. Recalculated. Messages had already been sent. Adjustments already made. Trade routes would shift. Agreements would be reviewed. Not because of the war. Because of what ended it. The drill elder remained. Still in its tank. Still facing the table. Essel waited. Carefully. What does it mean? Essel asked. The elder did not answer immediately. It rarely did. Its thoughts moved differently. Slower. But when they arrived, they stayed. The old piece, the elder said finally. The pause. You know what built it. Essel nodded. Mutual deterrence, he said. Shared risk. Balanced power. The elder's limbs shifted slightly. Fear, it said. A longer pause. The old piece was fear. Essel was quiet. Every species in the Concordat had understood the same thing. That any war would cost too much. That any conflict would escalate. That any escalation would spread. So they chose not to begin. That was stability, the elder continued. 47 species. All dangerous. All careful. Another pause. Equal. Essel considered that. And now, he asked. The elder turned one eye toward the door Voss had exited through. Then back to the table. Now, it said, there is a difference. Silence. They believed, the elder continued, that the humans were not afraid. They were correct. Another pause. They believed that meant the humans had nothing to lose. Essel nodded slowly. That would make them vulnerable, he said. The elder's gaze did not shift. No, it said. A longer pause. It means they have already lost. Silence. Many times, the elder added. Essel felt something settle in that. Not fear. Understanding. A different kind. They are not fearless, the elder said. They are past fear. The chamber seemed smaller now. Not physically. Conceptually. What is the new piece built on? Essel asked. The elder was quiet again. For a long time. Knowledge, it said. Essel waited. Every species here, the elder continued, has now seen what they are. What it took to make them. What it means that they remain. The pause. The old piece said, we are all dangerous. Fear each other equally. Be careful. The elder's limbs shifted slowly. The new piece says something else. Another pause. There is one thing here. That does not break. The way the rest of us do. Silence. 46 species, the elder said, now understand this. Essel swallowed. And the Vthkai? The elder did not hesitate. They understand it most. The pause. They had to learn it directly. On the transport leaving Neutral 7. Voss opened her notepad. Not the treaty page. The other one. A name. Written years ago. Still there. Not crossed out. Not erased. She looked at it for a moment. Then closed the notepad. Not because it no longer mattered. Because it did. But it was not part of what came next. Across from her, Torin was working. Filing documents. Updating records. Peace had as much paperwork as war. Sometimes more. Are you? He started. Then stopped. She looked at him. I'm fine, she said. He nodded. Because he knew she was telling the truth. Not performing. Not hiding. Fine. The way people were fine. After loss. After work. After everything that had needed to be done. Was done. Outside the window. The stars held their positions. Unchanged. They had been there before the war. Before the Concordat. Before anything that called itself civilization. They would be there after. Burning. Patient. Indifferent. Across the Concordat. Changes were already happening. Quiet ones. Trade routes adjusted. Alliances reconsidered. Policies rewritten. No announcements. No declarations. Movement. Time that happened. When something fundamental shifted. No one said it publicly. No one wrote it into policy. But everyone understood. The humans had not enforced peace. They had defined it. And more importantly, they had chosen it. That was the part no one could ignore. Because it meant, if they chose differently, nothing in the Concordat would be enough to stop them. The diner reopened. Perrin cleaned the counter. Made coffee. Served it to whoever walked in. Because that was the next thing. And the next thing always came. That was the only constant. Not war. Not peace. Not power. Continuation. Humans built. But rebuilt. Again. And again. And again. They did not stop. They did not wait. They did not ask if they should continue. They simply did. The Concordat had lasted 4,000 years. Careful. Balanced. Afraid. But it would last longer. Not because of fear. Because of something else. Something harder to define. Something harder to measure. Something no one had built a system for. Species. That stayed. And that was enough. The stars burned. The agreements held. And somewhere, in systems that had never heard of the Concordat, humans were already doing the next thing. They would always be doing the next thing. Because that was what they were. And now, everyone knew it.